Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another Infinite Inning Reissue episode, number 7 in that series, and it takes us back to September 2017, the program's first year, and episode 23. Before I get going with today's new extemporaneous remarks, let me clarify a small matter for the reissue portion of the show. First of all, I feel like I need to apologize for my relative youth and inexperience. I wasn't exactly young then either, but as with many of these reissues, this was so early in the show's run that I feel like I hadn't found my podcasting voice yet, if I ever have. I felt like I had at the time, but in retrospect, it's pretty clear that I hadn't. Now, when the episode begins, you'll hear me tee up a song. The song is, or was, Happy Christmas, War is Over, by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. It's central to the story that I'm telling about 1969 and one very famous New York Met. Whereas I did use it in the original episode, and this was a legit usage. Part of the inspiration for doing these reissues, as you know, is to make them bulletproof for copyright claims. Thus, you will not hear the song. You will hear me act as if it's playing, because back then it was. But in this version, you won't hear it. I'll paper that over a bit with some new comments. I'll point it out when it's happening. It's only about 35 seconds into the reissue portion of the show, and then we're past it. But as I say then, the main thing to keep in mind is the song's chorus, which I can say to you, it's just a few words, and you can hear them two ways. You can hear them as kind of hippie bull, but I don't think that's what John Lennon meant. He was talking about a people exercising their latent power. And so he sang, and you probably hear it every December, War is Over if you want it. This episode contains a couple of stories of baseball players and baseball fans pushing back against authority. That seems like a good theme for this week, given what's happening in the rest of the world. First, as I just alluded to, we'll go to 1969 and visit with the late Tom Seaver and his wife Nancy, then jump back to the day a very unpopular president made the mistake of showing up at the World Series. I feel obligated to say this every time we tell this sort of story. There is nothing more American than dissent. Dissent is patriotism because it makes us smarter. Democracy, yes, is inefficient in the sense that many voices shouting at once is a cacophony, but the reverse of that is one man alone with his own mind, and his thinking may be flawed. And I think we've all had the experience of coming to some conclusion, and then we pull our pal Brad aside, and we say, I think what I'm going to do is say this, or I'm going to go over there and I'm going to tell her this. And they say, no, no, you might want to rethink that a little bit. And when you hear their reasons, if you're willing to hear them out, you say, oh, yeah, it hadn't occurred to me that might go badly that way. Whereas a dictator, a prince, never has to have that conversation. And I can tell you that my closest friends have saved me from disaster a number of times. And I think on average, I'd like to hope that I'm not a stupid or impulsive person, but we can all go wrong in the labyrinth that is our own thoughts. That's why it's always so odd to me, and I think I said this in one of the newer episodes recently, that those people who now make a living wishing aloud for a king or a dictator always assume that we're going to get an enlightened despot out of the leadership gumball machine, whereas human history has provided vanishingly few examples of enlightened despots. Mostly you get Pol Pot. and madness and death always ensues. Somewhere during my education, I had to learn about and read some small chunks of Niccolo Machiavelli's famous 16th century political manual, The Prince, Il Principe, which may or may not have actually been a parody. The jury is still out 500 years later. Until basically now, I had not in any way been acquainted with the author's 1517 blockbuster, Discourses on Livy. But the New York Times columnist Jamel Bowie recently made special reference to that tome's Book 1, Chapter 58, titled, That a People is Wiser and More Constant Than a Prince. And that idea seemed consistent with what I just said to you, which of course represents the sort of thing I've been thinking a lot of lately when I'm not thinking about baseball. So I read the chapter myself, and indeed, Machiavelli quotes Livy as saying it is the nature of the multitude to be an abject slave or a domineering master. And Machiavelli didn't object to that statement so much as expand the definition to include our leaders, who are, in fact, us. Just because one of us ascends out of the ranks and becomes king or president or prime minister or whatever you want to call him, doesn't mean he's not still a shaved monkey, without all of a shaved monkey's flaws. And we are, of course, all ex-monkeys who came down from the trees, went bald, mostly bald, and put on pants. Some of us have more hair and less pants, or less hair and more pants. I believe that's what they're referring to when they talk about the golden ratio. Machiavelli didn't excuse the people, he just, as I said, added the leaders in, saying, I maintain that this infirmity, with which historians tax the multitude, may, with equal reason, be charged against every individual man, but most of all against princes, since all who are not controlled by the laws will commit the very same faults as are committed by an uncontrolled multitude, proof whereof were easy, since of all the many princes existing, or who have existed, few indeed are or have been either wise or good. I'm going to bring that thought around to Rafael Devers in a moment, but for now, I just want to say thank you, Niccolo. The argument that he's addressing here is essentially the masses are dumb, the masses are a mob, you need to have a king or a prince or one brilliant leader over them, and he's saying, yeah, it's all the same. It's just a mob is a group of people, and a prince or a king or leader is one person, but they all have the same flaws. And he goes on to talk of what you might call obedience to the rule of law and how it changes how both the leader and the masses act. He says, were any to accuse both princes and peoples, the charge might be true, but that to make exception in favor of princes is a mistake. For a people in command, if it be duly restrained, will have the same prudence and the same gratitude as a prince has, or even more, however wise he may be reckoned. And a prince, on the other hand, if freed from the control of the laws, will be more ungrateful, fickle, and short-sighted than a people. And further, I say that any difference in their methods of acting results not from any difference in their nature, that being the same in both, but from their having more or less respect for the laws under which each lives. And if, as I have said, a people errs in adopting courses which appear to it bold and advantageous, princes will likewise err when their passions are touched, as is far oftener the case with them than with a people. And that makes perfect sense, because it's very hard to get 100,000 people to agree on any course of action, but terribly easy for one man to agree with himself that you, Josh, are an asshole, and thus the state requires your head to be separated from your neck. Bye, Josh. There is so much more in this short chapter that is good in this way. Both the people and its government, Machiavelli says, have need to be regulated by the laws, because the prince who can do what he pleases is a madman, and the people, which can do as it pleases, is never wise. However, a turbulent and unruly people may be spoken to by a good man and readily brought back to good ways, but none can speak to a wicked prince, nor any remedy be found against him but by the sword. One final quote from all that. When a people is absolutely uncontrolled, it is not so much the follies which it commits or the evil which it actually does that excites alarm as the mischief which may thence result, since in such disorders it becomes possible for a tyrant to spring up, and that chimes with example after example from history. That's Weimar Germany and the rise of Hitler, a weak central government, paramilitary in the streets, and lots of bad ideas going around without contradiction. The concept of princes and flawed humanity brings us back to this week's very controversial trade by the Boston Red Sox of Rafael Devers to the San Francisco Giants for a bag of stuff. I am shocked by all the commentators who were shocked, because I've been expecting this for weeks. I've been expecting it back to spring training. Look, Devers is a good hitter with negative defensive value. Note I say good, not great, and that's because he's a career .267, .338, .499 hitter away from Fenway Park, and do not get me wrong, there's nothing bad in what I just said, and oh boy, could the Giants use that sort of production. As I speak these words, Giants first basemen have hit .202, .302, .335, and their designated hitters have hit .232, .311, .346. I know Wilmer Flores has 51 RBIs, but he hasn't been all that productive. Not really. Now, that's not to say that Devers won't adjust and keep whatever edge Fenway gave him, but it doesn't always happen. It mostly doesn't happen. Look at Xander Bogaerts. He was a career .312, .374, .496 hitter in Boston, and he's a .268, .342, .406 hitter at Petco, which was a very obvious thing to first guess. What I'm trying to say is that this is not the same as trading Mookie Betts. Trading Mookie Betts called for pitchforks and torches, hot tar and feathers. Letting Bogaerts, a run-of-the-mill defensive shortstop, leave as a free agent as he reached his 30s was a wise move. Getting out from Devers' 10-year contract is painful now, but will probably also be beneficial in the long term. But let's not pretend that that's what this was about. This was about human emotion and princes unconstrained by law, by which I mean owners. The prior Red Sox regime signed Devers to that long-term contract. That was January 2023. Then Chief Baseball Officer Chaim Bloom was later replaced by current Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow. I don't know what the internal Red Sox deliberations were on signing free agent third baseman Alex Bregman, a far better fielder, to what might turn out to be a one-year contract. But okay, Breslow took the shot. Now, what did he say to Devers about it? When did he say it? Did he get Devers' buy-in? Clearly not. Breslow has been cagey about that. Regardless, come spring training, Devers was the designated hitter, and he complained. Then he started the season in a slump that, to be cynical, looked a lot like a guy trying to get traded. In his first 5 games, he went 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts. I'm old enough to remember Gary Sheffield intentionally throwing balls away at third base so as to get moved out of Milwaukee. But okay, we'll say it was a legit slump. Other players have been that lost before. Adam Duvall whiffed 16 times in 19 at-bats in 2023. Franchi Cordero, you remember Franchi, had 15 Ks in 16 at-bats in 2022. It's weird how most of these were Red Sox. Devers himself had 14 Ks in 19 at-bats last September, although he was hurt at the time. Devers then started hitting, and hit well. Bregman subsequently got hurt. Would Devers go back to third? No, he would not. Tristan Cassis went out for the season. Would Devers go to first base? He would not, or at least, according to the most recent word from Boston reporter Pete Abraham, he wouldn't without guarantees that the Sox would not later move him off the position. Now that's nuts. Here's a hypothetical. Say Devers had played first base and was as out of place there as he proved to be at third. Simultaneously, the designated hitters the Red Sox had rotating through in his place didn't hit all that much. We jump forward about 6 weeks from now. The Red Sox are close to a wild card spot or even first place. Simultaneously, the Guardians, deciding they're out of it, are willing to trade them free agent to be Carlos Santana, pretty much for free. At this stage of his career, Santana isn't a great hitter. He's hit .241, .333, .407 over the last year and a half, but he still rates as a strong defensive first baseman. He won his first Gold Glove last year at the age of 38, no less, and he's still been scooping them this year. Now, would that be a pennant-winning trade? No. Might it have helped? Sure. By bumping Devers back to DH, again in this hypothetical, and replacing a bad glove with a good one, you'd be helping the team quite a bit. But in this alternative reality, the Red Sox, having made a vow, would have had to say no. But let's not even pretend that that's what this was about. This was about human relationships. And as much as we'd like our leaders to be above this sort of thing, as Machiavelli was trying to tell us, they're not. John Henry and the gang have in no way earned the benefit of the doubt, but one way or the other, they asked Devers to do something for the good of the team on 3 separate occasions, and he balked on 3 separate occasions. Did they mishandle that? Probably. Was he petulant and inflexible? Was this a broken marriage? Yeah, and that's really it. Was it a good baseball deal that they made? Beside the point, which is what Breslow was trying to say in his press conference the day after. Was it bad for the Red Sox in terms of this year's effort? Also beside the point. Sometimes people get mad at each other, and if one or both of them is unrestrained from doing something about it, they break up, or worse. As I put it earlier, bye, Josh. I'll probably say something about this in this week's new episode of The Infinite Inning, but this is why Rogers Hornsby was traded or fired 17 times. Although I'm not ever going to be a John Henry or Red Sox front office defender, I do have a little empathy for them in the sense that I have worked at jobs where there were otherwise talented employees who made coming to work every day sheer hell and made what should have been a pleasurable job just painful. Every meeting, every email was like stepping into the hall in junior high school when you knew that the bully was waiting for you after class. And guess what? For the good of the team, those people had to go. Putting that fig leaf aside, we're back to Machiavelli. Even if Henry and Breslow were wrong to feel that Devers had to go, they felt that way, and nothing constrained them, so they acted. They weren't enlightened despots. They were just angry. That's what I've got for this reissue episode. We'll take a quick break, and on the other side, we go back to 1969. I mean, if you want it.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit ActiveDay.com to apply.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
When you live in turbulent times and powerful emotions are provoked, people who are in a position to have access to the public eyes and ears tend to get a similar idea. And the idea is simply this, that they are moved in one direction or another by what's happening, and they want to talk about it. Their main job, the main reason that they are before the public may have nothing to do with the times or the issues that they are motivated to speak about, but nonetheless, they have the stage, and that's how they choose to use it. This is not new, and it is not surprising. Maybe one Christmas you've heard this song from 1971 on the radio. And here is where I had previously put John and Yoko's Happy Christmas, War is Over, their 1971 single. If you've somehow not heard this 54-year-old song, and I'm not shaming you for that if you haven't, it's a big culture. But if you haven't, all you need is love. But not Love Actually, that's a different matter. That's a movie. I'm quoting John again. All you need is love, which they do use in that movie. But putting it aside, all you need to remember is the chorus, war is over if you want it. The really original idea in this song, which will be sung momentarily by the Harlem Community Choir, didn't begin as a song lyric. It began as a series of billboards. They went up in December 1969 in New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, Rome, Athens, Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Helsinki. They were black and white, and they said in big letters, "War is over." Then in smaller print, "If you want it, Happy Christmas from John and Yoko." The part of this that no one ever talks about is that John Lennon and Yoko Ono were nearly beaten to this kind of gesture by Tom Seaver, the ace of the New York Mets. The Mets were quite miraculously in the World Series that year, playing the Baltimore Orioles, and the day before the series started, United Press International released this dispatch. Tom Seaver, the New York Mets starting pitcher for the opening World Series game here tomorrow, believes the United States should get out of Vietnam. He says he plans to buy an advertisement in the New York Times saying, "If the Mets can win the World Series, then we can get out of Vietnam." The Mets would have to defeat the Baltimore Orioles before Seaver could place such an ad, but the 24-year-old Californian, who electrified the baseball world by winning 25 games for the Mets, helping them to the National League pennant, thinks he can carry out the plan in any case. Quote, "I think it's perfectly ridiculous what we're doing about the Vietnam situation. It's absurd. When the series is over, I'm going to have a talk with Ted Kennedy, convey some of my ideas to him, and then take an ad in the paper. I feel very strongly about this." That Seaver had chosen this moment to make this statement wasn't denied by him exactly, but when reporters tried to follow up on it with him, he simply said, "I don't want to be used for political purposes." And with that, he went off and pitched game one. And I don't know whether he really said it or didn't, but the sentiment was consistent with things that he had said on other occasions. Talking about some off-season educational work that he did, Seaver, who was a reservist in the Marine Corps, said that in a class on argument he had taken the con side in the Vietnam controversy. "I took the view that it's the wrong war. It's basically a civil war and a guerrilla war, but now we are committed too deep and at an ungodly cost." At the same time, he didn't want to change anyone's mind just because he was a ball player. He said after the World Series, "I don't know if people can look at me and say, there's a human being, not just a baseball player. Something as important as our involvement in Southeast Asia should be judged without emotional involvement. It would be very wrong for people to look at me and become involved about 18-year-old young men losing their legs and their lives, about a 4-year-old baby who never saw his father because he's a prisoner of war. If someone came to the right conclusion about the war because he was emotionally involved with me, the ball player, I don't think that would be right." And Seaver never did buy a billboard. And yet, well, on December 31st, 1969, on page 30 of the New York Times, the second sports page, just below an ad for the Burlington ski lift route of Mohawk Airlines is a small box. It's not even an eighth of a page. It, too, is black type on a white background. And it says, "On the eve of 1970, please join us in a prayer for peace." And in smaller font, Nancy and Tom Seaver. Asked about this later, Seaver said, "Nancy and I thought about placing the ad for quite a while, and we finally did it. Because we thought, what can we tell our kids 20 years from now we did to help save some lives? We want to have something to show 20 years from now." And so the idea that people have the stage will want to use the stage for what they perceive as positive purposes is not a new one. And though you may find their words intrusive, You don't want to silence those people because war is over if you want it. And a prayer for peace may be the first verbalization, the first solidification of that thought in your mind and the minds of so many others. And that prayer becomes the seed crystal that stops a terrible and pointless atrocity from happening. There's always a first time, and it may not have to come from one of the Beatles. Could be a pitcher, too, a terrific one. I'm Stephen Goldman, and this is the Infinite Inning Baseball Podcast. Never interested in Georgie. He had pimples and he smelled of fish. But when he said he had front row tickets to the Bay City Rollers show, you agreed to go out with him. It was only when you arrived at the venue itself that he confessed that he didn't have the tickets, never had them in the first place. It's just that I really liked you, Betty Lou, and this was the only way I could think of to get you to go out with me. Even if I don't have the tickets, I do have Episode 23. Someday, you will tell your grandchildren that you knew in that moment you would marry him, but that's not the truth. The truth is, his body has never been found. Next time, you'll hold out for the Bee Gees. Welcome back to the show. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to be speaking with you again. I would like to carry on with a tale in an adjacent vein to the one that I brought you in our opening. It's a story of the 31st president. Herbert Hoover loved baseball, but baseball didn't always love Herbert Hoover back. It began when he ran for president the first time in 1928. It must have seemed like one of those elections that are supposedly about nothing. Some of you will remember that in 2000, the contest between George W. Bush and Al Gore was deemed an election about nothing, but it wasn't, and by September 11th, 2001, it became painfully obvious that it hadn't been about nothing. Well, in 1928, World War I was 10 years in the background. The economy was, as far as anybody knew, cooking along at a really high level. Calvin Coolidge, the incumbent, was incredibly popular, and there was nothing really stopping him from going for a third term. Remember, there was no constitutional amendment then preventing a president from running for extra terms indefinitely. Coolidge had finished out Warren Harding's term after he died in office and then had one of his own, and although he was pretty much the anti-personality president, Theodore Roosevelt's daughter said that he looked as if he had been weaned on a pickle. He could have won again, and he probably wanted to run again, but he was waiting to be drafted, and somehow it just didn't happen. Instead, the Republicans nominated his Secretary of Commerce, Herbert Hoover, a guy Coolidge really didn't like. The Democrats, in the way that Democrats have, nominated Governor Al Smith of New York. Now, Al Smith had a lot going for him, but in terms of national electability, the Democrats managed to nominate an Irish Catholic at the height of anti-Catholic fervor. The Klan had made a comeback based more on their hatred of Catholics and Jews than on their traditional hatred of African Americans, and had won the state government of Indiana and were pretty powerful in Oregon, too, which always surprises me to hear about it. Smith was also from New York City at a time of great anti-urbanism, and he was a Wed, meaning that he favored the abolition of prohibition at a time when a good chunk of the country was still enjoying the fact that they couldn't have a drink. Hoover was dry. So since I'm going to hit the theme, nothing ever changes, and less is new than you think it is several times today, I might as well start now by noting the Democratic Party's usual hypercompetence and great sense of timing in choosing their candidates. Reinforcing the idea that it was an election about nothing, neither party did a lot of thinking in terms of formulating their platforms that year. The Republican platform was basically, if you like the way things are under Coolidge, elect Hoover. He won't change anything. He's the great engineer. He was, too. He was a mining engineer.
and he'll tinker with the economic machine to keep it functioning at the same high level that you're used to. The Democratic platform was basically, we'll do whatever they did that's working, don't worry about it, but maybe we could have a drink now and then? They really didn't do a whole lot to distinguish themselves. Again, nothing changes. Nevertheless, Hoover's looking for an edge because you can't take anything for granted, and he wasn't Mr. Personality either, so it was a challenge trying to present him in a human light. On September 1st, 1928, he goes to Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. to see the New York Yankees play the Washington Senators. He picked a pretty cool day to go, too. The place was just crawling with future Hall of Famers. In addition to Senators owner Clark Griffith and Yankees manager Miller Huggins, who were not exactly on the field, the starting lineups included, on the Yankees side, Earl Coombs, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Leo DeRocher, who would later go in as a manager, and Waite Hoyt, who came into the game in relief. On the Senators side, there was Sam Rice and Goose Goslin in the outfield. Bucky Harris was playing second base. He also went in as a manager. And Joe Cronin, who was just starting out with the Senators then, came in as a defensive replacement at shortstop. As the players are warming up before the game, a photographer working for Hoover gets a great idea. Hoover can have his picture taken with Babe Ruth, biggest star in the country basically at that moment, less than a year removed from setting a record with 60 home runs and on his way to another 54 in 28. And so Hoover, or Hoover's photographer, asks via Clark Griffith if Ruth will come over and pose shaking hands with the candidate. Ruth says no. Griffith quoted him as saying, "It's a matter of politics." That was a paraphrase, though. What he actually said was something more like, "Nothing doing on politics. Besides, I'm for Smith." Supposedly, he also said, "Tell him I'll be glad to talk to him if he wants to meet me under the stands." Then they went and they played the game, and in the sixth inning, the fans had a riot because a Senators pinch runner, the pitcher Sad Sam Jones, was called out for being hit by a batted ball, thus killing a Senators rally. In the end, Hoover ducked some bottles. Senators shortstop Bobby Reeves made his 42nd error of the season, which explains why Cronin came in replacement of him later, and the Yankees won 8-3, 4 of those runs being unearned. Thank you, Bobby Reeves. The one thing Hoover didn't get was a picture. Well, Ruth's words were reported, with the Republican-leaning population among those who were supporting Ruth through endorsements and ghosted newspaper columns. Ruth's business manager, Christy Walsh, quickly arranged for him to make a statement of apology. This is what Ruth supposedly said, as reported in the newspapers. "When the photographer asked me to go to Mr. Hoover's box yesterday, I labored under a misunderstanding and deeply regret that I did not avail myself of the opportunity of meeting him. I hope Mr. Hoover will be gracious enough at some future time to permit me to present myself to him." The babe did not say that. It's not just me doing a funny voice. Hoover accepted Ruth's apology and said, "I learned of the incident only from the papers. I certainly can sympathize with Babe Ruth for not wanting to hold up the game for more photographs. As an earnest baseball devotee, I long have admired Babe Ruth's batting ability, and I look forward with pleasure to meeting him." This is what we call, for everyone involved, saving face. The incident didn't hurt Hoover any at the polls. That November, he slaughtered Smith, winning 58.2% to 40.8%, taking 21.4 million popular votes to Smith's 15 million, and winning 444 electoral votes to Smith's 87, and no, Smith didn't even take New York. A few years later, there would be no saving face for Herbert Hoover. The economy had crashed hard worldwide. That wasn't his fault. And although he didn't get a lot of credit at the time, he did a lot to try to rejuvenate the economy, although he was handicapped by the economic doctrine of the time, which had him doing all the wrong things. For example, he raised taxes at the same time that the U.S. was raising tariffs, and the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates. Essentially, they just sucked what little money was in the economy out of it completely. He later figured out, though, that some pump priming was necessary, the re-injection of capital into the economy, and he started something called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which was in some ways no different from what the New Deal would do later, or what Barack Obama did when he was elected after the economic crisis of 2008. The problem, from the point of view of people who were living under Herbert Hoover, was that the Reconstruction Finance Corporation existed to give loans to banks, to railroads, to corporations, not to people. And there were 10 million unemployed, 30% of the workforce, although 50% was at least underemployed. Hoover said no one had starved, but people had starved. It was a miserable, miserable time, and he seemed unable to react to it. He believed the federal government had no business helping people directly, that was for communities and charities and done through the goodwill of people locally. He couldn't get his head around the idea that in a crisis so huge, only a wallet as big as the government's could help. And when the Congress tried to pass bills that provided for some kind of direct assistance, not to companies but to people, he vetoed those bills. And so he became hated, and he couldn't really go anywhere. He locked himself in the White House and for the most part didn't see anybody but Boy Scouts and other people that were unlikely to criticize him or look at him askance. Still, he loved baseball, he liked throwing out first pitches, and he had become a Philadelphia A's fan, and the World Series was on. So on October 5th, 1931, he and his wife and the Secretary of the Navy and a few other potentates trained up to Philadelphia to catch Game 3 of the World Series. The president knew it wasn't a great idea to go. In his memoirs, he recalled, "Although I like baseball, I kept this engagement only because I felt that my presence at a sporting event might be a gesture of reassurance to a country suffering from a severe attack of jitters." Well, not so much, actually. First of all, he botched the first pitch. It went over Mickey Cochran's head and was fielded by the umpire. And as the game went on, booing could be heard from the stands, and then a chant. But the chant wasn't perhaps what you might have expected. You might think in what was pretty much the floor of the Great Depression, that the fans in the stands would have chanted, "We want jobs." But of course they had bought tickets, so they had money. Maybe they were some of the ones who had jobs. It wasn't work they were after. They were thirsty. What they chanted was, "Beer, beer, we want beer." Remember when I said Hoover was a dry? One columnist covering the game said, "Hey, the Philadelphians must be bored of wine and whiskey." Hoover left the game early. He also left the White House early, being defeated by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the election of 1932, worse than he beat Al Smith. So you see, protest at a sporting event is not exactly new. Respect is earned regardless of what your title is, and Philadelphia was and is a tough place to come out of hiding. P.S. The A's lost. Like I said, nothing ever changes. Oh, and one other thing. The political life of this nation is our blood, and it courses through everything we do. We were founded in it. And when even as disinterested a personage as Babe Ruth says, "Nothing doing on politics," he's lying to you. I'll be back with Mary Craig in just a moment. By the hippie shake, we've reached the end of another episode. You can follow...
Here is where I previously told you how to follow me and the guest on Twitter, but there is no guest on this reissue episode, and I am no longer on Twitter, and neither are you. Much as you only need to remember, war is over if you want it, or failing that, all you need is love. All you need to find me on social media is to go to stephengoldman.bsky.social.
You can also write us at infiniteinning@gmail.com, and I promise I will return your email. I'm slowly working through the bunch that we've gotten. We have a sponsor now, but nevertheless, this episode is brought to you by the number 41. Our producer, in a very emotional scene, recently revealed to me that he is not actually a human being, but a snake named Randall, who can neither hear what we are saying nor reach the controls. It explains so much, but I don't want to let him go. That would be snakist. Our theme song, which you are listening to now and have in fact been listening to throughout the episode, was co-authored by myself and Dr. Rick Mooring, and here is my personal message to him. Rick, I know you know where the stuffed fish is. It escaped the fire last time, but it's going in. You need to reveal it, take it to Andy's fire pit, and we should burn it while dancing and singing Glory Hallelujah. Well, speaking of fish, given that I'm incapable of cooking anything at all, they've told me I'm not a good enough chef to prepare fugu in my own kitchen, but I read somewhere online, a reliable site, that its toxicity had been greatly exaggerated, so I'm gonna give that a shot. And if I survive that, I'll be back next week with more tales and discussion from inside the Infinite Inning.
That's all, folks. Thanks for listening to this reissue episode. I'll see you this weekend with the new stuff, episode 336. Wonder what that'll be about.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.